Hi there, it's Carl Irwin, the Con Magician. I've got something interesting to discuss with you today. Um, Imagine a scenario where someone selects a card, and it's four of clubs is the card. Now, what happens is after some kind of selection or some kind of relatively normal occurrence in a presentation, something very unusual happens, maybe a transformation or something like that. And this is not a tutorial on what I'm doing. This is a tutorial on theory. What you have here is something that is unreal. This is unreal, right? So there is a miraculous sort of occurrence, some kind of visual thing that occurs. And this appeals very much to magicians, particularly in the marketplace, is this concept of an effect being at its highest when it is most unreal. Okay. Now, by contrast, you could have a situation maybe where a spectator is given the opportunity to make a free selection, just like before, same exact thing. They make their free selection. They just reach out. Let's say they select this card right here, and it ends up being a predictable outcome. This is something different. This is something that is surreal. It is not unreal, but it is surreal. And the reason why it is surreal is because there is an agency in there that they have control over. There is not a miraculous occurrence, but rather an inexplicable outcome from some kind of free agency that exists in the real world. There's nothing about what has occurred that is in and of itself unreal. And that then dives into kind of the dreamlike state where we imagine wonderful and weird things, but in the context of the dream, we recognize them as being real. Only in your dreams can you fly, and it is not really amazing to fly. You're flying because in the context of the dream, flying is a capability that you have. It's in that moment that you wake up that the recollection, particularly in the immediate moments, where what was real in that situation takes on that surreal sort of sensation, meaning that it feels like something unreal happening in reality without explanation. So free agency certainly gets you there. Another concept would be something like this, where perhaps you have another example of agency, but it's not necessarily a free agency under the spectator's control, but rather an agency under the performer's control. And in the same way, you have the same kind of outcome. Again, this is sort of in the realm of the surreal, because there is some kind of normal agency at work. There's not a miraculous occurrence. There's not a transformation that is outside of reality, but rather everything that has occurred occurs within reality. Cards are dribbled, one is taken, but the outcome is entirely improbable and unexpected. For me, especially with cards, I find that the surreal is far greater than the demonstration of the unreal. Specifically for cards, because there is an understanding with cards that there is a sleight of hand. There's a repertoire of card sleights. I actually find that, for example, a gambling demonstration has, just in my view, just from my worldview, my perspective of it, that a gambling demonstration, and a lot of magicians aren't going to like this out there, I find that a gambling demonstration has a far greater impact than some other kind of elaborate, miraculous occurrence with a deck of cards for that reason. Because the spectator, while they understand that there's such a thing as card sleights, everything that happens in a gambling demonstration does not look like sleight of hand. They can't really just run to that. Everything that's happening in a gambling demonstration with cards happens in the real world, and thereby the outcome is a surreal experience rather than an unreal experience. Whenever we encounter things that are completely unreal, we automatically presume that illusion is at work. Something is happening there to create the illusion of something that cannot happen. And even though we don't know what that mechanism is, we do accept that it exists, and then we can quickly discount the unreal because it is unreal. I mean, a good example of this would be just everyday technology. I really don't know how. I mean, I know basically how. I do understand, but I can say I don't understand why my television works the way it does, or my cell phone. But nonetheless, I don't find it to be a miracle whenever the screen lights up and I see high definition moving, some kind of moving picture of something that is not actually there. I do understand that technology as an umbrella explanation exists, even if I cannot identify what the technology is. And I find that I believe that for most spectators, that is how they look at visual illusion. When they see something that is miraculous in appearance, there is a very quick understanding, I think, subconsciously, that there is a mechanism at work to create this outcome. Whereas in the surreal, particularly when free agency is exercised, the spectator is at a greater loss to explain what has actually occurred, because everything that has occurred in a real environment with the incorporation of some free agency, whether it's theirs or even the performers or somebody else that they're looking at, another spectator, as a third party, they're viewing this. They're at a loss to explain how the outcome can occur with the insertion of agency, free agency. And the lack of a visual illusion leaves them without an actual illusion in and of itself, meaning that when free agency is incorporated into the outcome, there actually is no illusion. There's no assumption of illusion. There's no acknowledgement of illusion. There's no identification of illusion. There is merely just what has actually happened in an incredible way. And I strongly favor those kinds of effects. So I will get that comment sometimes, particularly like even in reviews. And I see this in other reviews of other effects that can be found in the marketplace, is that some kind of effect, at least in terms of a magician looking to buy something, that an effect lacks the highest impact because it does not have a visual quality. Don't put too much stock in that. That's my warning. Don't put too much stock in the visual. Don't always be on the hunt. And visual magic is great. There's some things that are very visual that are amazing. I mean, coin magic is highly visual, but there is a presupposition that it operates on sleight of hand. There is that, right? So what you're doing with the coin, if you can make it more surreal, I think that's a greater endeavor than making something highly visual. Any way that you can incorporate agency of some kind and get an outcome that happens under real terms and real choices where there is no apparent illusion, I think that is actually stronger magic. And if you even look at magicians, I mean, we talk about Penn and Teller around here because it's the most open platform that everybody knows in the kind of general population. But if you look at that, which kinds of effects and presentations get the highest regard? It's usually the mentalism. It's usually those. Those are the things that everyone goes away scratching their heads. I mean, look at cards. I mentioned Danny D'Ortiz, frequently on here because he does magic that is surreal and non-visual. And it just gets such a heavier impact than doing something that is visual and can just quickly be discounted. Even without understanding the mechanism, it can easily be discounted as an illusion with some kind of mechanism. Whereas this other kind of magic that lives in the surreal cannot. It's not easy to do that with that kind of presentation. So anyway, not very necessarily great examples of it, but just a few examples to demonstrate, especially with cards, why I don't favor visual magic personally, especially with cards. Because when you're taking, I mean, this has been said before, if you can make a card transform, is that greater magic than if you could make a cup transform, an ordinary object in an impromptu kind of situation? I say no. If you're going to go for the visual, I don't see any reason why you want to put your visual magic into playing cards. If you want to aspire to the visual illusion, it may be better to go with more ordinary, impromptu kinds of items that can be done in an ordinary and impromptu kind of environment. I think that helps because it does remove at least the more baseline mechanism of sleight of hand that we often associate with cards and often with coins as well. So anyway, just a few thoughts for you to think about, and why I favor the magic that I do. This is good too, by the way, because if mentalism in action gives us the surreal, and the surreal is, I think, more mind-bending than the unreal. I think for most people, that's what I posit here. If that is the case, then the fact is that methods can be very simple. The methods suddenly get very, very simple and accessible to us to create the surreal rather than methods that would be required to create the unreal, which would generally need to be more elaborate in order to do that. So anyway, things to think about. There's more to say, and there's certainly arguments for the other side, and I'm sure people will put that in the comments, and I'm not here really to create an argument about it. Just my perspective on Magic for the Common Magician and why I find it to be, I think, superior in a lot of ways to a lot of other effects that people seek out, and a sort of an apologetic why I think it can be superior, given that surreal explanation. So anyway, good luck with that, and happy magicking.